It's a nice one, huh? It's huge, but it's almost finished. We're almost finished this chapter, so I wanted to show you one last thing. I didn't come back to it, but we've already been through the evolutionary significance. I just want to talk about this picture. I know we're almost at the end, but then on Monday I can start another chapter. So this, we've talked primarily about moving glucose through glycolysis and cellular respiration. But as I mentioned before at the beginning of this chapter, proteins and fats can also be used to generate ATP. So I mentioned a couple of times that actually fats generate more ATP per molecule, and that is true. It takes more energy, just as we spoke about in glycolysis, where you have to add 2 ATP before you get 4 ATP back. A similar thing happens with fats. Our body doesn't want to start breaking them down, unfortunately sometimes, but when you do start breaking them down, and to break them down, it has to input a little bit more ATP to get it started. So it's a bigger investment. But then it's going to split. Remember, our fats are made of a glycerol molecule attached with 3 fatty acids. It's going to separate those. Our glycerol is going to enter the system into glycolysis. It enters into one of the steps of glycolysis. Our fatty acids actually enter the system when we convert pyruvate into acetyl coenzyme A. So they don't enter at the beginning because they're not glucose, but they enter at different steps, and then they are used to go through, make ATP. Per gram, there's a lot more carbon, right? We're always getting the energy for these ATP from breaking carbon. There's a lot more carbon in those fatty acid tails. So for every gram of fat, you get a lot more ATP that you burn out of it. So it's much, but it takes more investment to get it started. So your body prefers to use the glucose first. And then lastly, I just want to mention that in proteins, remember, proteins also have a carbon backbone. There's 2 carbons. Those carbons are also can be used under conditions more of extreme starvation. People will start to use protein. Your body doesn't want to use up the enzymes, but it will start to take structural proteins. It'll take your keratin. People's hair may start to fall out if they're starving. It'll take their collagen in their skin. Ultimately, your body will use whatever it can, and it will go for structural proteins. And it's the carbon in that backbone that will be used. There's an amino group. Remember, there's a carboxyl group and one carbon in the middle, and then there's an amino group. Your body doesn't like that amino group and will urinate it or get some way to get that amino group out. But the carbons are used and entered into different aspects of citric acid cycle, and you get a little bit of ATP too. Not that much, and that's always why it's a last resort for the body. These are the preferred pathways. So that's pretty much everything I want to say for chapter 9. Sorry I made that little mistake the other day, but other than that, I think you probably get it. There's a little bit in here about the evolution, but I've been through that 3 or 4 times, so I'm not going to go through it again. On Monday, we'll